I hadn't been to the house in over 6 months. It used to feel like mine, like part of me still lived in the walls. But when the invitation came through that group family thread, calling it a formal dinner, I knew something was off. We never called them that. It was always just dinner. Nothing formal about ribs on paper plates and Dad humming Motown while flipping burgers. That was before. The drive back to Ashfield was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like even the road is warning you. And when I pulled up to the house, the first thing that hit me was the front porch. It wasn't the chairs. They'd always creaked, but the wind chime. It was new, metal, cold. The one Mom used to hang was handmade, wooden. It didn't ring. It clicked gently in the breeze. I stepped inside and it smelled different. Vanilla and something artificial, like a showroom. Not the lemon and lavender Mom used to mix herself. The photos in the hallway were rearranged. A giant one of Dad and Dahlia laughing at a fundraiser I never heard about hung where our old family vacation picture used to be. The hallway still bent the same way toward the dining room, but somehow it felt shorter and darker. I walked in, and there she was, Dahlia, sitting at the head of the table, my mother's seat. No one said a word about it. Not Dad, not my sister, not even the cousins who used to fight over who got to sit next to Mom at Thanksgiving. Dahlia poured wine like she'd been doing it for decades. She nodded at the server like she'd hired them herself. Her voice carried when she introduced me to one of Dad's business partners. "This is Kayler, Gerald's youngest. She's been traveling, haven't you, sweetie?" I hadn't been anywhere. I'd been 3 miles away, working, paying my own rent, staying out of everyone's way. Nobody looked surprised. Nobody said, "Hey, wait, that's Madeline's seat." It was like the chair had always been Dahlia's. And I was the one who just wandered in without a name tag. We moved to the toasts. I wasn't planning to speak, but Uncle Ray, with too much whiskey in his breath, called out, "Let Kayler say something. You always had a way with words, kid." I opened my mouth, and Dahlia cut in, raising her glass before I could get a syllable out. She's more the backstage type anyway, always working, never shining, but that's what makes her so dependable. The room let out a scattered chuckle. Even Dad chuckled. I heard someone, maybe my brother, nudge her with a grin. No one looked at me. I didn't respond. Just sat there, my mouth closed, my hands folded tight under the table so no one could see how white my knuckles had gone. I didn't even feel anger. Not yet. Just that hollow kind of disbelief. The kind that makes you feel like you're floating in the middle of your own life, looking in from the window. They laughed because they believed it. Or maybe, because it was easier than stopping it. The food came out in waves, all plated perfectly. No casserole dishes passed around, no seconds offered. The roast duck was Instagram ready. The scalloped potatoes had a garnish. It was beautiful. It was hollow. I tried talking to my cousin Lucy, asking how her nursing classes were going, but she smiled, nodded, and turned back to her phone. My sister Maris changed the subject twice when I spoke up. "Anyway, Dad, you were saying about the new kitchen counters?" Like I hadn't even spoken. Dahlia was in every conversation. She called the meal a new family tradition and said things like, "This family just needed a refresh," while taking credit for every dish, even the apple pie which I made. Across the table, my little cousin Milo looked at me with wide eyes, then down at his plate. He was the only one who didn't smile all night. He just sat there, silent, chewing too long. I pushed my fork across my plate. I didn't just lose a seat, I lost the script. I brought the pie because Mom used to make it. Her recipe, her handwriting still smudged in the corner of the index card I kept in a drawer. I baked it the night before, knowing full well no one had asked me to. Knowing that maybe they wouldn't even touch it, but it felt like the only way I could walk into that house carrying something that still belonged to her, something that still belonged to us. When I set it on the sideboard, Dahlia wrinkled her nose like I'd just brought in a dead animal. "Oh," she said, smiling with teeth. "That's heavy. Don't you think something lighter might have been better for tonight?" She turned to the caterer behind her. Yes, they had a caterer, and said, "Let's take that back to the kitchen. We won't be needing it." No one said anything. Not a word. My brother, he was standing right there, muttered under his breath, "We've moved on from that old stuff anyway." I just stood there, watching the pie disappear behind a swinging door. They weren't just clearing the table. They were clearing her, clearing the last crumbs of the woman who held that house together longer than she should have had to. And none of them flinched. The laughter picked up again as if nothing had happened. Glasses clinked, stories floated. Dahlia lit up the room like she was holding court. I sat in my assigned seat. Yes, she had made place cards and tried to stay upright through the rest of that meal. I'd never heard so much nothing in my life. Every story she told was about change. This family needed new energy. We're entering a new era. Tradition is lovely, but it's time to evolve. She tossed those words around like they were decorative pillows, soft, meaningless, easily replaced. I tried twice to join in, once to ask my sister about her new job, once to compliment the centerpiece, but both times I was cut off. The conversation shifted like a breeze. People talked louder, smiled tighter. Not one person looked me in the eye. I sat there, in the house I grew up in, feeling like a squatter. And then, of course, there was the toast. My sister stood, lifted her glass, and said, "Here's to new beginnings, to family, growth, and gratitude." Everyone clapped. I didn't. I couldn't. The silence in my head was deafening. But apparently, I was the only one who could hear it. Dahlia had just told a story about reinventing family rituals when she paused and looked at me across the table. "You know," she said lightly, "some people just have trouble letting go." I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even look angry. "Letting go of my mother," I said, "isn't the same as erasing her." She didn't pause. She didn't blink. She slapped me across the face, in front of everyone. The sound cracked through the room like a firecracker in a church. No one moved. No one said a thing. My father, he didn't yell. He didn't gasp. He didn't even check if I was okay. He stood up, placed a hand on Dahlia's back, and walked her out of the room. Just like that. One cousin gasped. I saw a hand move over a mouth, then it dropped, then it folded into a lap. I stayed on my feet. Not because I was brave, not because I was proud, because I couldn't believe what had just happened. My cheek didn't even sting. Not really. It was numb. Or maybe that was just the rest of me catching up to the part of my heart that had gone cold months ago. I walked to the kitchen. Alone. The smell in there, rosemary, citrus, whatever candle scent Dahlia had picked, hit me like a wall. It didn't smell like dinner. It didn't smell like home. It smelled like something that had been polished to hide what it used to be. I heard the car pull out of the driveway. I heard the tires crunch gravel like it mattered more than I did. I walked back to the dining room. No one met my eyes. No one moved to help. I picked up my own plate, scraped it into the trash, wiped my fork clean. I thought about Mom, folding napkins the night before a holiday, singing under her breath, laughing when she burned the rolls again. Her voice filled that kitchen like it belonged there. Now there was only air freshener. Grief, I thought, isn't when someone dies. It's when you realize they've been replaced. I walked toward the door. My bag was still where I left it. As I bent down to pick it up, I felt something slip inside. My cousin Lucy didn't say anything. She didn't even look at me, but she had put the pie tin back in my bag. I didn't cry that night, but I didn't sleep either. Back at the guest house, I sat in the dark for a while. I didn't turn on the lights, didn't take off my shoes. I just stood there, keys in one hand, the bag with the untouched pie in the other, trying to figure out where the weight in my chest was coming from. It wasn't the slap, at least not just the slap. It was everything that came before it, and everything that followed in silence. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror above the small bookshelf. I expected to see anger, a red cheek, something dramatic. But all I saw was a face I barely recognized, calm, flat, exhausted in a way that didn't show in color or lines, but in absence. I pulled out my phone, typed a message to Silas, erased it. What was I going to say? "Hey, remember when Dad's girlfriend smacked me across the face and you all sat there like I was a stranger?" I looked at Mom's old cookbook. It sat on the shelf like it always had, pages warped from flour and fingerprints. I didn't reach for it. Didn't flip through it, just stared at the worn spine like maybe, if I stared long enough, the past would leak through. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I'd been carrying this break for so long, I forgot it was even broken. There used to be a time when that house held warmth like a body. I remembered one particular Thanksgiving, 5 years ago, helping Mom decorate. She moved slowly that year, knees aching, but still insisted on doing the table herself. I tried to take over. She wouldn't let me. She placed this hand-stitched lace doily, something she'd kept since her wedding, in the center of the table and said, "This house holds memory like wood holds smoke. Even if you clean it, it stays." I didn't understand it then. I do now. Because nothing in that house smells like her anymore. Everything's been replaced. Glass vases instead of clay, chrome handles instead of the wooden ones Dad carved one summer when we couldn't afford new fixtures. There's a hollowness to it all, like someone gutted the soul and left the structure standing. Earlier that week, I'd tried to come by. I knocked, like a guest. Dahlia opened the door with a wide smile and said, "You should really text first. We're reworking the living room." "It's a mess." She blocked the doorway without saying it. I caught a glance past her shoulder. The closet near the stairs was open. A few coats hung neatly. But the one that stopped me, the red floral dress Mom wore to my high school graduation dinner, was gone. And I knew exactly where it had gone. Later that night, lying in bed, I scrolled through Instagram. I don't follow Dahlia, but Lucy does, and Lucy tags people. Dahlia had posted earlier that day. She was standing in the sunroom. The caption read, "Vintage with a fresh twist, nothing like repurposing a memory." She was wearing the red dress, my mom's dress. I could feel my stomach turn, slow and deep. Not the kind of sickness that comes from food, but the kind that rises when you realize something you loved has been made into a costume. I remember the exact moment Mom wore that dress for the first time. The fabric still had the scent of the store on it. She bought it just for my graduation. Said, "It's time I wore something red. Red makes women look like they have something to say." And there Dahlia was, wearing it to pose in a room that didn't belong to her, holding a wine glass like a trophy, captioning someone else's life like it was content for the algorithm. I sat up, couldn't stay still. So I walked. Past midnight. I walked past the Boone house, our house, and saw the lights on. Laughter spilled out of an open window. Not loud, but real. The kind that comes easy when no one in the room feels unwelcome. I wasn't close enough to make out the words, except for one voice. Familiar. My sister. We're her family now. I don't even think she meant it cruelly. Maybe she didn't mean it at all. Maybe it was just something you say when things move faster than your conscience can catch up. I turned away, went back to the guest house, sat down at the desk and opened my old laptop. I dug through emails, scanned documents, photos, old PDFs I hadn't looked at in years. And there it was, a mortgage file, dated 3 years ago, signed by Mom, and by me. I had forgotten. Or maybe I never believed it would mean anything. But there it was, in black and white, my name, listed next to hers, co-owner. I thought I was just renting space out back, but I wasn't a guest. I was part of the foundation. The next day felt slower, heavier. I told myself I needed to pick up a box of old things I'd left in the attic of the main house, an excuse thin enough to pass. Dahlia wasn't home. Gerald answered the door like he wasn't sure why he did. Maybe guilt opened it for him. Maybe habit. I walked through the hallway like a stranger in a museum exhibit. The house didn't feel like it used to. It had been wiped down. Every photo in sight had been replaced. The old ones were gone. Not in storage, not relocated, just gone. There used to be a frame of Mom and me from my nursing school graduation, taken right there in the garden. Sunlight, a breeze, and the biggest smile I'd seen on her face since the treatment started. That photo was gone. In its place, Gerald and Dahlia, same frame, same lighting, different decade. He noticed me staring, said, "It's just a picture, Kay." Just a picture. I couldn't even answer him. Because I knew if I opened my mouth, it wouldn't be words that came out. Pictures aren't just pictures. They're memory anchors, and someone was unhooking mine. 2 weeks ago, I had spent nearly a week designing and ordering a custom pocket watch for Dad's birthday. Silver casing, his wedding date with Mom engraved on the inside, her initials below. I even picked it up myself, wrapped it, paid cash. That night, Dahlia handed it to him before I could even stand up. "Oh, Gerald," she said, "I wanted you to have something timeless." He opened it, smiled, kissed her hand like they were filming a Hallmark commercial. I sat there, numb, recognizing the tag from the watchmaker still half tucked under the ribbon. I didn't say a word. Not that night. Today I drove back to town and walked into the shop. The same man stood behind the counter. When I gave him the order number, he pulled up the record. "Kaler Boone," he said. "That was a beauty. Paid in full, custom engraving." "Is anything wrong with it?" "No," I said. "Just needed to confirm." And that was all. I left the store feeling like my chest was packed with sand. Heavy, but not loud. It wasn't just the watch. It wasn't just the photo. It was a pattern. A campaign. They weren't stealing moments. They were stealing credit. I stopped by the cafe on the way back to the guest house. Needed caffeine, or company, or both. Delphine was there. Her eyes met mine before I even reached the counter. "I figured you'd come in today," she said. "Want your usual?" She slid over a black coffee and pulled out a small manila envelope from her purse. No ceremony, just quiet understanding. "Saw Gerald's new post," she said. "You'd think your mama never lived in that house." Inside the envelope was a photo. The original graduation shot, Mom's hand on my shoulder, me trying not to cry, both of us framed in spring sunlight. "I saved this," Delphine said. "I knew they'd try to clean the place of her." I didn't say anything, just held the photo. Stared at it like it could reattach pieces of me. We sat there a while, talked about Mom, her final days, her stubbornness, her need to make everything feel like home, even as it fell apart. "She told me," Delphine said, "that you'd be the one to hold the house together. Not because they'd ask you to, but because you'd know how." I shook my head. "I don't know how." "You do," she said. "Because it's not about keeping stuff. It's about not letting them rewrite your part in the story." The drive back was quiet. I pulled into the gravel lot behind the guest house, turned the key, sat at the kitchen table with the photo still in my hand. I pulled out a notebook, drew a line down the middle of a page. On one side, I started listing what had changed. The couch in the living room, gone. The Afghan blanket my mother crocheted, replaced with a faux fur throw. The wedding china, packed away, replaced with minimalist white sets. The cedar chest, moved to the attic. The pantry labels, new font. Dahlia's aesthetic, even the recipe book. Gone. Furniture replaced, decorations reset. Clothing disappeared, photos retouched, voices erased. This wasn't disorganization. It wasn't oversight. It was a method, a mission, not emotional neglect. Calculated displacement. She wasn't moving in, she was rewriting. Maybe I thought they had accidentally left me out. Maybe I'd convinced myself it was just poor communication, misunderstanding. But it wasn't. I wasn't forgotten. I was deleted. I knocked on Maris's door just after 10, carrying a plastic tote of old photo albums, things Mom had labeled back when her handwriting was steady. I figured if nothing else, I could drop off these pieces of the past and get back to the guest house without talking much. Milo answered the door before Maris could. His voice chirped, full of excitement and syrup. "Grandma Dahlia made pancakes this morning." I didn't react right away. I think something inside me blinked out, just for a second. Maris stood behind him, mouth already in motion before I could say a word. "It's just easier for him that way. He's still little." Easier for him, sure. I walked in, set the tote down. My throat was dry. Everything I wanted to say felt like it would come out jagged. So I asked about school, homework, anything else. My hands shook when I zipped the tote open. I tried to keep it light, tried not to look at the way Milo hugged her leg and called her grandma again. That title used to mean something in this family. I didn't lose my mother. I watched someone rewrite her into a stranger. By the time I got back to the guest house, the sun had shifted past the trees and into that burnt amber color. I didn't bother changing clothes, just threw my keys on the counter and grabbed a bottle of water. The voicemail icon blinked. One new message. Maris. Her voice sounded small, worn out, like regret had chewed through her vocal cords. I should have said something. That night, at dinner, when that happened. I didn't know what to do. I just didn't want to start something with Dad. I thought staying quiet was better. I don't know. I'm sorry. I listened to it 3 times, didn't delete it, didn't call her back. Some things sound like apologies, but when they show up after the bleeding stops, they just echo. I remembered the time she stood up for me in 7th grade, cornered a kid in the cafeteria who kept calling me Ghost Girl because I wouldn't speak up in class. She told him if he didn't shut it, she'd shut it for him. Funny how different silence feels when it's from the same mouth that once defended you. I needed air, not words. So I went for a walk. The cemetery was quiet, like always. I didn't go to the grave, just sat on the bench near it. Same one Mom and I used to rest on after Sunday walks. Grief used to cut. Sharp and quick. Now it pressed, constant, like someone was leaning on my chest, but never pushing hard enough to crush anything, just enough to remind me it was there. A man walked by, slow pace, soft step. He nodded. "You're Madeline's girl, aren't you?" "Yeah," I said. "She was good people. I remember when she used to bring lemon bars to the 4th of July service. Real kind, real sharp too." "Didn't let your dad get away with much back then." I nodded. He kept walking. That 2-minute chat did more to affirm her existence than anything I'd heard in that house in years. They may have let someone else call her grandma, but no one could force her out of my blood. That night, I cleared the table in the guest house, pushed everything aside, pulled out a legal pad, started listing everything that had changed. Furniture, photos, smells, voices, words spoken that felt like paper cuts, moments that didn't belong to the people claiming them. I wasn't building a case out of spite. I was building it out of necessity, not for revenge, for clarity. Because once you realize they've already erased the version of you they couldn't control, the only thing left to do is document the truth they can't delete. I began scanning documents, old emails, saved texts, receipts, PDFs from Mom's lawyer. The tone in me shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't anger. It was precision. You don't fight to be remembered. You fight to not be erased while you're still alive. I laid out every piece of paper on the table like it was an autopsy. Legal pad, mortgage copies, printed emails, old birthday cards Mom had signed in her cursive that always leaned to the left. Photos, some digital, some Polaroids, faded and bent. Receipts from the watch shop, a printout of the house deed with my name, bold and present. No more emotions, no more justifications. It wasn't about making a point. It was about making a record. The more I stared at that table, the more I realized how subtle it had all been. Dahlia didn't storm in and take over. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand. She just suggested, rebranded, shifted the temperature of the room until no one noticed how cold it had gotten. People didn't push back because they didn't feel pushed. She didn't need to erase me. All she had to do was convince everyone I'd already walked away, but I hadn't. And now, I wasn't just the one who stayed. I was the one who saw it all clearly. I was never too sensitive. I just didn't have the tools. Now I do. Around midnight, I pulled out the sewing basket Mom used to keep under her bed. I hadn't touched it in years. Thought I'd donated most of it, but something told me not to toss that one. It was buried under fabric scraps, loose buttons, and a spool of thread that had long since tangled into itself. There, folded twice and pressed flat like a secret, was a letter. Her handwriting hit me before the words did. "Kaylor," it began. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a reminder. I know you'll be the one to stay, not because they made you, but because you're the one who knows how to hold things together. She talked about the house, the effort she put into keeping it a home, the way people walk past a structure without knowing what it took to make it feel like safety. "I've asked Gerald to ensure your name is on the deed," she wrote. "You've earned more than you've been given." I sat on the edge of my bed and cried. Not because of grief, because someone once saw me, because she knew. I didn't wipe the tears, I let them fall. Then I got up, scanned the letter, printed a copy, and placed the original in a frame. I set it next to my bed, like a compass. Later that night, I opened Gerald's Facebook profile. I hadn't looked in a long time. He didn't post much, but Dahlia tagged him often. The most recent photo was from 2 days ago. Gerald and Dahlia in the living room, which no longer looked like the one I grew up in. Everything neutral, staged, fake smiles, their hands linked. The caption? Finally whole. I stared at that sentence until it stopped meaning anything, until it sounded like static. Then I opened my own account. It hadn't been touched in 5 years. I found a photo, one of Mom standing in the same room. The lighting was different. Her smile wasn't. Neither was the soul in her eyes. I posted both side by side. Left. Mom, barefoot, with an apron on, holding a cup of coffee and looking like she owned the room. Right. Dahlia, holding a wine glass like a trophy. The caption was short. It was whole long before it was redesigned. No hashtags, no tags, no comments. I turned off the replies. Validation wasn't the point. The next morning, I printed out the key documents. The deed, the letter, photos, the engraving receipt. I made 3 packets, one for me, one for the safety deposit box, one for my lawyer. This wasn't a threat. This was documentation. When people try to steal your name from the walls, you write it in ink on the foundation. I texted Maris. I don't need an apology, but I won't be invisible anymore. She read it, didn't reply. That was enough. I spent the rest of the evening on the porch. Just me and the framed letter, cradled in my lap like something living. You'll be remembered because I stayed, I whispered. And now they'll remember me because I stopped staying quiet. I didn't knock this time. I stood at the Boone house door with a folder tucked tight under my arm, the air heavy around me like it knew what was coming. Dahlia answered, still in yoga pants, holding a half-finished protein shake. She blinked fast, caught off guard, but managed to shape her mouth into that smile she wore like a second skin. Well, this is a surprise, she said, glancing behind me like maybe someone more important was coming up the walk. I didn't bother with small talk. I'm not here to ask. I'm walking through the house I co-own. She hesitated, just long enough for the message to land. Then stepped aside, slow and composed. Gerald's inside. I walked past her like I'd never left. He stood near the dining room, hands folded, not saying a word. I nodded at him. He didn't nod back. I didn't need their permission. I needed proof. Proof that this house hadn't forgotten, that I hadn't imagined my place in it. The dining room hit me first. Not because of what had changed, but what hadn't. The notch in the wall from where the old clock used to hang was still there, covered in fresh paint, but the indent stayed, stubborn, like the wall remembered being held up by something real. The living room had been rearranged, sure. New curtains, new throw pillows, a rug that probably cost more than my car, but the fireplace still carried the same faint mark where the bricks didn't align just right. Mom used to call it the house's crooked smile. I stood in front of it, eyes fixed, didn't say a word. Dahlia wandered in behind me. We're thinking of remodeling this space, she said, as if she were the curator of someone else's museum. I turned to face her. You don't get to paint over things that remember us. Then I opened the folder. I pulled out the deed, laid it flat on the table. This house has 2 names, I said, my voice calm but unshakable. And only one of us earned hers. Neither of them spoke. Dahlia shifted her weight. Gerald looked like he wanted to disappear into the wall. I walked out to the porch and sat down. The air felt different outside, like it hadn't learned how to lie yet. Delphine showed up 10 minutes later. No call, no knock. Just her, a paper bag, and that tired kindness she always carried in her eyes. She sat beside me, handed over the bag. Inside was a photo album, weathered, corners bent, but intact. We didn't talk at first, just flipped through the pages. Photos of birthdays, burnt pies, the backyard swing set that splintered too easily. Then we hit the one from the first Thanksgiving after Mom passed. I had cooked everything, alone. And there I was in the photo, standing on this very porch, apron crooked, smile half-formed. But I was there. Delphine tapped the photo gently. This house doesn't remember her. It remembers you. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. She closed the album and stood. She can take the walls. But you've got the weight of the story. And just like that, she was gone. I stepped back inside and walked to the fireplace. From my bag, I pulled out the frame. Inside, a copy of the deed and the letter Mom wrote me. I placed it on the mantel, right where Dahlia couldn't miss it. I left it there, no speech, no declaration. Later, I heard her voice rise in the living room, not yelling, just tight, controlled. She can't just leave her things around like this. And then Gerald, finally, spoke. Leave it. That was all he said, and that was the first time he'd said anything that mattered in years. I walked to the door again, slowly this time. He followed. At the doorway, I turned to him. I'm not staying to make you uncomfortable, I said. I'm staying so you remember who didn't leave. He didn't say a word, but he didn't look away either. Gerald called the day before, left a voicemail that sounded rehearsed. The family wants to talk, Kaylor. Let's put everything on the table and clear the air. Clear the air. Like this was about miscommunication, not erasure. Still, I said yes. That evening, I showed up with a manila envelope under one arm and a thumb drive in my jacket pocket. I didn't wear anything formal, just jeans, an old sweatshirt, and boots that could take dirt if it got messy. I didn't expect honesty. I expected theater. The living room had been rearranged, chairs in a loose circle, a coffee table in the middle like a peace offering. Dahlia was seated beside Gerald, her hand on his knee, her other hand resting like a throne on the armrest. My siblings were there, quiet but present, eyes darting to each other. She opened with what she always did, control wrapped in sugar. We all want peace, she said, but there's a pattern of aggression here that we can't ignore anymore. Aggression. That was rich. I said nothing. I scanned the room. Who looked away? Who leaned forward? Who wasn't surprised I'd come? Then I reached into my coat, pulled out the thumb drive, and plugged it into the mounted TV. The screen came alive with a timestamp. Familiar voices filled the space, awkward laughter, clinking glasses, and then the slap. It played in full volume. The moment Dahlia hit me, the way everyone froze, the way Gerald said nothing. Gasps rippled through the room like a slow leak. My brother leaned forward. One cousin whispered, "We didn't know she recorded that." Dahlia stood, flustered. "This is taken out of context." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. "This is your context." Gerald started to speak, his voice calm. "Let's not escalate." I cut him off. "Escalation was when you left with her after she hit me. That was the moment." He sat back. I didn't turn off the TV. I let it go black on its own. Then the next blow came. But not from me. From her hand. As I glanced down, something caught my eye. The ring. Gold band, rose-cut stone, simple, delicate. It wasn't hers. "Where did you get that ring?" I asked, almost too quiet for anyone to hear. Dahlia looked down at her hand like she'd forgotten it was even there. "Oh, that? It was in a box of old things. Gerald said I could take what I liked." I didn't react. I reached into the folder I'd brought and pulled out a photo. Mom, smiling, holding a cake at my graduation party. The ring on her hand unmistakable. I walked over, placed the photo next to the TV remote and stepped back. Silence rolled in like thunder without rain. No one dared say a word. One of the aunts stood up and walked out. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I turned to Gerald. "You gave her the house, the memories, the seat at the table, but you don't get to give away what was never yours." I laid out the envelope, slowly opening it. Inside was the legal confirmation. My name on the deed, the scanned letter from Mom. Then I crossed the room, walked to the fireplace, and lifted the frame I'd placed days before. Letter and deed under glass. I didn't wave it around. I didn't raise it like a flag. I just held it. "This is the last time I explain myself," I said. "From here on, you'll remember me by the things I won't let you erase." No one moved, not even Dahlia. I turned and walked toward the door. Outside, Delphine waited in the car, engine running, headlights on like she knew I wouldn't stay long. I didn't cry, didn't look back. The phone buzzed until the screen lit up in surrender. 99 missed calls, no voicemails, just his name, over and over, like he thought if he dialed enough, it might undo the way he let me walk out of that house without a word. I didn't pick up. Not the first call, not the second, not the 37th. I didn't need to hear his voice. I already knew what it'd sound like. Measured, rehearsed, aching to sound like concern without having to hold any of it. The final text came at 6:11 a.m. "She's gone. Please come talk. No punctuation. No real message. Just a notification that the storm had passed, and now he was left holding its wreckage. I stared at the screen, waiting for the anger. But it didn't come. All I felt was a dull kind of pity. Not because he lost her, but because he never really saw me. Not once. Not even when I stood right in front of him with everything that should have mattered. So I didn't go to the house. I went to the library. Delphine met me there with a folder she pulled from her garage, labeled in pencil, just in case. Inside were news clippings, yellowed at the edges, stapled together in careful bundles, court documents, letters to editors, community threads from another town, another life. Dahlia had done this before, not quite the same way, but the shape of it matched. An older man, a sudden shift in property titles, family members pushed out, allegations of emotional manipulation, elder financial abuse, nothing ever stuck, no charges held, but the smoke was thick enough. Delphine handed me the folder without commentary. I read through the headlines quietly. Some women, she said finally, don't want husbands, they want legacies, ones they didn't earn. I didn't react, didn't cry, didn't thank her for finding it, because this wasn't about evidence anymore. It wasn't about winning. It was about knowing I hadn't been paranoid. That what I'd felt in my gut, every cold glance, every silenced word, wasn't weakness, it was instinct, and I should have trusted it sooner. Later that afternoon, I printed out the article that hit hardest, folded it in thirds, slipped it into a plain envelope and wrote my name on the back. I drove to the Boone house, didn't get out of the car right away, didn't plan on knocking. I stepped out, walked up to the front door, and slipped the envelope through the mail slot. Didn't wait for anyone to find it. Didn't need to. Some truths don't need to be shouted, they just need to exist. When I got home, I started packing. Not to move out, but to move forward. Boxes of things I no longer needed, clothes that didn't fit the version of myself I'd chosen to become, papers I had held onto out of fear that no one else would remember. I left Mom's apron hanging by the kitchen, bought new flowers and set them on the windowsill. Opened every window in the place, even the ones that stuck. Let the air move through. Sometimes reclaiming space isn't about ownership, it's about breathing in something that's finally yours again. Before sunset, I drove out to the cemetery. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't bring anyone. I knelt beside her grave and stayed there a while before I spoke. I didn't fix them, I said. But I didn't let them bury you either. I pulled out the photograph Dahlia had replaced in the hallway. Mom smiling, standing next to me with her hand on my shoulder. I placed it by the headstone. Didn't frame it. Didn't laminate it. Just left it there like it belonged. I sat for a while after that. Didn't pray. Didn't cry. Just let the wind move around me like a second skin. Legacy isn't what people leave behind. It's what you refuse to let them take. I got back in the car, put both hands on the wheel, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't drive away from anything. I drove toward what was next.